Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
ManhwaRecap scanned the battlefield and noticed that the Agarthians were still able to defend despite the fact that the Abyssal Army had a higher number of high-ranking combatants, like Calamity-ranked monsters, in their ranks. That giant bone ship is targeting the Calamity-ranked monsters before they can clash with the Agarthians, ManhwaRecap thought. But it doesn't matter. I'll just have to do what I always do. The clone of the Outer God then glanced at the giant skeleton king protecting the city, then to the half-elf who had been about to charge at one of the abyssal demigods earlier. But something else caught ManhwaRecap's gaze, and that was none other than the golden anchor in Aiko's hands. Oh, is that one of the pillars of eternity that I see? ManhwaRecap chuckled. If I only knew, I would have brought my main body here. You see, Daniel is unable to collect them, so that mission now falls onto my shoulders. How unfortunate. ManhwaRecap's clone might be at the peak of the demigod rank, but it didn't possess all of its original body's abilities. Aiko raised her golden anchor like a sword and sent a faint ripple through her surroundings. The defenders of the city who were initially holding their heads due to extreme pain stopped screaming as the sensation that tortured them disappeared completely. ManhwaRecap knew that the pillars of eternity controlled the laws of the world. The clone knew that a direct confrontation against its holder was not a good idea, especially when it currently lacked the abilities to overpower Aiko. The Outer God's clone only possessed 4 skills, but these skills were enough to help the Abyssal Army tilt the tide of battle in their favor. Since its first attempt failed, the vile abomination shifted its attention towards the Agarthian army and unleashed an ear-piercing scream, making all of them stagger. The abyssal creatures who were fighting against the Agarthians stopped attacking the lower-ranking soldiers and focused their attention on the saints and supremes. They had fought alongside ManhwaRecap long enough to know what was going to happen next. The majority of the soldiers of Agartha roared like wild animals as their eyes glowed red. The Outer God had forced them to enter a berserked state, not caring if the ones they attacked were friend or foe. The first beings that they attacked were the people nearest them, causing the formation of the steadfast army to collapse. No! King Septimius roared in anger after seeing that his soldiers had started killing each other. He wanted to snap them back to their senses, but the demigods made sure that none of the supremes of Agartha could support their people. They increased the intensity of their attacks, forcing the saints and supremes to defend themselves with everything they had if they didn't want to end up dying in the exchange. ManhwaRecap had the power to drive those with weaker willpower insane. But even strong-willed people were not safe from its mind-manipulating powers. As long as they were injured or currently exhausted, the Outer God could easily break past their defenses and instill a single command in their consciousness, and that was to kill the creature nearest to them, regardless if it was friend or foe. Focus on attacking the city, ManhwaRecap ordered. Raise this kingdom to the ground. The abyssal monsters answered the Outer God's call with their bloodthirsty roars, making the entire battlefield shake. Elijah sneered as he pushed back the supremes who had ganged up on him. Now that one of ManhwaRecap's clones had arrived, the conquest of Agartha would be faster. Suddenly, a large beam of light flew towards ManhwaRecap, forcing the Outer God to dodge it. The Outer God had been paying close attention to Poseidon since it considered it to be the greatest threat on the battlefield. Even its original body would not survive a direct hit from the flying bone ship, so it had already readied itself to dodge at the first signs of Poseidon targeting him. This is bothersome, ManhwaRecap thought, so it decided to position itself between the flying bone ship and the city of Agartha. If the Poseidon were to target it, the Outer God would just dodge, letting the bone ship's attack hit the city. Seeing that the demigod was using the city as a hostage, Poseidon changed its strategy and unleashed countless laser beams towards the sky. These beams of light then rained down on ManhwaRecap and the other demigods, who were attacking Agartha, forcing them to back away. Using this opportunity, Lux charged towards ManhwaRecap and engaged the demigod in close combat. The two battled across the skies, not able to land a hit on the other. Are you sure you want to focus on me? ManhwaRecap asked in a teasing tone. The other demigods are targeting the city now, you know? Lux didn't answer because he knew that his enemy was telling the truth. However, he simply couldn't do anything about it. Even if he defended the city, Nyarlathotep would just manipulate the Agarthians who were under its control to do its bidding. In order to change the flow of battle, he needed to eliminate Nyarlathotep's clone as soon as possible, or else the entire army of Agartha would be wiped out. Just as the half-elf expected, his relentless assault had broken the outer god's concentration, freeing the soldiers of Agartha. However, the damage had already been done, and they had lost nearly a sixth of their overall forces due to Nyarlathotep's schemes. As the two were fighting, the outer god let out several high-pitched screeches in order to force Lux into entering a berserk state. However, its attempts weren't working because Lux was protected by his guild buffs, as well as his strong resistance against mind control abilities. Suddenly, he heard a loud explosion behind him, making his face turn grim. One of the demigods had broken the barrier that protected the city of Agartha. Although the Skeleton King was fighting with everything it had, the 6 demigods were attacking the city from different directions, making it unable to defend itself completely. Eiko and her clones were also hard-pressed to defend the city because several Calamity-ranked monsters had managed to get past the Agarthian army's first line of defense due to Nyarlathotep's meddling. These Calamity-ranked monsters had now joined the demigods in attacking the city, and the defenders fought desperately to protect the people who were hiding in its underground shelters. While the battle against the Abyssal Army and the Agarthians intensified, Elijah was able to deal the killing blow to the founding king of Agartha due to Nyarlathotep's earlier screech. The awakened kings and queens were only able to fight due to the will that they had left behind in their bodies before they died. Simply put, the kings and queens no longer had souls. They were more like programmed robots who were only ordered to do one thing. So when Nyarlathotep attacked their minds, it caused a brief lag in their movements, creating an opportunity for their opponents to deal a fatal blow to their bodies. The founding king of the ancient kingdom, King Agarath, didn't die right away after getting stabbed in the chest by Elijah. He was still able to fight despite his injuries, but his resistance only lasted for a few more minutes before he perished. The elite saints who accompanied him in battle died not long after his death, freeing Elijah from those who were attacking him. Instead of fighting the Agarthian army, Elijah flew towards the city of Agartha to join the other demigods in destroying it. Now that the tide of battle had finally shifted to favor the Abyssal Legion, the defenders were slowly being pushed back by their invaders. Aurora, who had been holding her sister in the underground shelter, suddenly shuddered and fell into a trance. A moment later, she touched her sister's head, making her fall asleep. "Take care of her," Aurora said as she handed her sister to her other brothers and sisters, who were in the same room as them. She knew that if she didn't do anything, her people would perish, which would mark the end of their kingdom. As someone who was loved by misfortune, she had the power to use it against her enemies. Because of this, she decided to join the battle and help her father and lover keep her people safe. Elijah saw Nyarlathotep fighting against Lux and decided to help the latter kill the half-elf. With 2 demigods attacking him at the same time, Lux had no choice but to distance himself because he couldn't fight against 2 of them at once. Also, both of his enemies were at the peak of the demigod rank, making them very hard to deal with. Suddenly, a song spread in the surroundings, making Lux, as well as the demigods fighting around the city, look in the direction where the song was coming from. Standing at the ramparts of the city, a beautiful young lady with long pink hair sang with her eyes closed. Dark clouds started to form in the sky, and thunder rumbled across the heavens. Lightning streaked across the sky as Aurora prepared to unseal her curse, allowing her to use the full might of Misfortune's beloved. A giant lightning bolt descended from the sky, hitting one of the Calamity-ranked monsters that had managed to enter the city and was starting to destroy everything in its path. Soon, more lightning bolts hit it, making it scream in pain. At the start, only a few lightning bolts descended. However, half a minute later, lightning fell from the sky like rain, forcing the demigods to distance themselves from the city. Although the lightning bolts wouldn't kill them, their instincts were telling them that getting hit by one of them was bad news. Aurora was manifesting and summoning all the misfortunes in the world, turning them into lightning bolts, which would curse the creatures they hit with misfortune. A pained scream escaped Aurora's lips as one of the lightning bolts hit her, making her stagger. She wasn't exempt from the relentless bombardment. In fact, she was more in danger of it due to her bad luck. After the first lightning bolt hit, more lightning bolts followed, making Aurora scream in pain again and again. The sound of her screams made Lux's eyes turn bloodshot, and the half-elf roared in anger, transforming into his demi-dragon form. Seeing that their enemy was planning to go all out with them, Nyarlathotep and Elijah glanced at each other and sneered. Both of them then unleashed a powerful long-range attack, not targeted at Lux but at Aurora, whose chaotic thunderstorm posed a threat to their abyssal army. Lux had summoned his clones, and all of these clones unleashed dragon breaths to block the two demigods' attacks, while the half-elf focused his attention on Nyarlathotep. Among all the enemies in his surroundings, the outer god was giving him a very bad feeling, so he was determined to end him as soon as he could. Faced with Lux, who was hell-bent on going for the kill, Nyarlathotep's clone knew that if it didn't use its trump card, it would lose against the half-elf in battle. Congratulations. Nyarlathotep sneered. It's time for you and everyone here to die. The outer god kicked the half-elf away before flying high into the sky. Countless lightning bolts hit its body, destroying bits and pieces of it, but Nyarlathotep didn't care. It simply laughed as its entire body expanded like a giant balloon. At that exact moment, Poseidon's main cannons fired and hit it directly. However, instead of being vaporized, the body of the outer god only grew as if it was using the damage it was receiving to empower itself further. Nyarlathotep's body continued to increase in size, almost 200 meters long. It looks absolutely horrendous, like a flesh monster with countless mouths and tentacles protruding from its body. Seeing this scene, Elijah and the other demigods hastily backed away in fright because they knew what was about to come. However, as if they were tied up by invisible strings, the demigods' bodies froze, and they were pulled towards the expanding blob of flesh with horrified looks on their faces. "Stop, Nyarlathotep!" Elijah shouted. However, all that answered him was a crazed laughter that reverberated across the entire battlefield. Soon, countless abyssal monsters were being pulled up to the ever-expanding monstrosity in the sky, making them all scream in fright. Elijah gritted his teeth and activated a special artifact that allowed him to instantly teleport away to the anchor that he had placed on the surface. A handful of demigods did the same, for they were the type who always had a life-saving technique that could be used in dire situations such as this. Unfortunately, not all demigods had thought this far, and they were all sucked up to be consumed by Nyarlathotep, making Lux's face turn grim. The creature in front of him was starting to resemble the image that hovered above Daniel when he had fought against it a year ago. The only difference was that Nyarlathotep's form was more horrendous and vile compared to Azathoth's. "Stop him at all costs," King Septimus roared. Perhaps sensing what the monster was capable of doing, he unleashed his strongest attacks at it, hoping that it would be destroyed. Unfortunately, his attacks only made the creature's body bigger, which was now over 2 miles long and still growing. Aiko, who was holding her nuclear-level blast bombs, was hesitating because she had a feeling that throwing it against the monster would do more harm than good. Then it happened. Everyone heard a heartbeat that pulsed so loud, it could be heard for miles on end. The sound of this heartbeat grew stronger and faster. Nyarlathotep's body then started to glow red at regular intervals, similar to the beating of a heart. The red glow intensified with each passing second, as if it was a bomb that was about to detonate. Alarm bells started to ring inside Lux's head because he had a feeling that he knew exactly what was going to happen next. As if confirming his worst nightmare, a single eye opened within the mass of flesh, looking down on all of them with contempt. "Perish in my name." Nyarlathotep's disdainful voice sounded across the entire lands of Agartha as its body swelled, in preparation for an explosion that might potentially destroy the entire planet. But just as its body was about to explode, something flying in its direction caught Lux's eye. His lover, Aurora, was flying towards the outer god who was about to explode with a determined look in her eyes. "And no." Lux shouted. Aurora! The young lady heard Lux's shout and glanced in his direction. Something golden was glowing on her chest, and it emitted a golden dome, encapsulating Nyarlathotep's entire body. Just before a world-ending explosion erupted, Aurora's affectionate voice reached Lux's ears. I love you, Lux. A second later, an explosion that was capable of destroying half the planet detonated, drowning the entire kingdom of Agartha in blinding light. Lux didn't know how long he was bathed in that white light. For him, it felt like forever. Although his eyes were closed, the image of Aurora bravely flying toward Nyarlathotep deeply etched itself into his mind. He noticed something golden glowing on her chest, which had trapped the gigantic body of Nyarlathotep's clone in a golden dome. Despite the blinding light that had covered his entire vision in white when the outer god's body detonated, he didn't feel any harm come to his body. He was certain that all Agarthians were also safe from harm. This was supposed to be a good thing, but he couldn't stop his heart from aching even more at this realization. After what seemed like an eternity, the light finally receded. Lux looked at his surroundings and saw the Agarthian capital still standing. Poseidon and the Agarthian army were also there, meaning that Nyarlathotep's plan to cause mass genocide was thwarted. The half-elf then looked up at the sky and shouted, Black fire! The black coffin immediately appeared beside Lux, knowing what its master would ask of it. Aurora, did you get Aurora? Lux asked. The black coffin lowered its head, making Lux's face turn pale. How about her soul? Lux's hands were already clenched into fists and were both shaking as he fought hard to keep his composure from breaking. Blackfire remained in its position, making all the colors disappear from Lux's face. No, Lux muttered. This is impossible. This can't be happening. The half-elf then raised his head and looked at the holes that the Abyssal army had dug to reach Agartha. Lux then turned into a lightning bolt and flew towards one of these holes, hurrying towards the surface. He was hoping that Aurora's soul had risen to the surface world, which was the reason why Blackfire wasn't able to find her. The trip to the surface was less than a minute, but the moment he broke through, he sensed the presence of several demigods in the surroundings. Lux ignored them all and continued to fly high in the sky. Blackfire! Lux once again called the black coffin, making it appear beside him. However, Blackfire's head remained lowered, making something inside Lux snap. With a roar filled with hatred and anger, Lux descended from the sky, targeting the fallen angel, Elijah, who had managed to escape Nyarlathotep's plan to add him to the sacrifices that would further boost the power of his self-destruction. The fallen angel felt the purest form of killing intent directed at his body. His first instinct was to fly away, but before he could do it, he found himself being pulled towards the half-elf, whose murderous eyes were screaming for his death. Duel divine. Perhaps out of sheer hatred, Lux's duel skill had suddenly evolved to the next stage, forcing the demigod to exchange one blow with him. Elijah sneered as he flew towards the sky in order to clash against the half-elf, who thought that he could overpower a demigod with his measly saint rank. A few seconds later, the sneer on his face disappeared when he saw that Lux had been absorbed by a giant skeleton king who had its arms pulled back, holding a giant golden spear in its hand. No! Elijah shouted in fright because the power behind the spear was stronger than the one he had seen back in Agartha. Its golden body was enveloped with a reddish-black aura that reeked of death. Gritting his teeth, Elijah roared as he used his sword to parry the blow from the gigantic monster, whose burning eyes blazed in a deep shade of red. When their weapons clashed against each other, a resounding crack reverberated in the surroundings. A second later, Elijah's sword shattered, and his body was impaled by the giant golden spear that pinned him to the ground. A great explosion that wouldn't lose to one of Aiko's nuclear-level blast bombs erupted. However, despite all that, Elijah was still alive. But what happened next made him wish that he had already died. The tip of the giant spear had pierced his body, pinning him at the center of a 2-mile-wide crater. The injury he received was fatal, but because he had once been an archangel, there was still a way for him to recover from his injuries. Unfortunately, Lux didn't give him that opportunity. The half-elf appeared in front of Elijah and smashed his face with fists blazing with hatred and killing intent. "It's all because of you," Lux shouted as he unleashed a flurry of blows, all targeted at the fallen angel's face. "Give Aurora back to me. Give her back to me." The other demigods in the surroundings were just about to attack Lux, but before they could do that, Echo broke through the surface and summoned Poseidon. Now that there were no more obstructions in the path of its cannons, the giant bone ship unleashed countless beams of light, all targeting the demigods who were about to attack the crazed half-elf, who was pummeling Elijah's face like there was no tomorrow. The demigods dodged and used their defensive skills to survive Poseidon's attacks, which they managed to do. Knowing that they were unable to face the giant bone ship, they decided to retreat and fight another day. However, they no longer had that chance. "Where do you think all of you are going?" Asmodeus asked in a bone-chilling tone. All the undead magic casters created a dome of black light, preventing the demigods from escaping. Although they were strong, the might of 100,000-strong legion of undead magicians was no laughing matter. "Let's start with you," Asmodeus sneered as he pointed at a demigod who looked like a gargoyle. "Dual Divine." Since Asmodeus could use all of Lux's skills, he didn't hesitate to tag team with Poseidon to put an end to their enemies. The demigod gargoyle screamed in frustration because it was unable to run away and was forced to attack the Lich King, who was hovering above Poseidon's deck. "All yours, Poseidon," Asmodeus stated. The giant bone ship then fired its cannons, destroying the gargoyle's wings, arms, and half of its lower body. A moment later, a black coffin appeared and mercilessly slapped the gargoyle's face with countless black hands before devouring it. It was as if black fire was also venting out its frustration against the abyssal monsters, who were responsible for killing one of its master's lovers. One by one, Asmodeus and Poseidon eliminated the remaining demigods, despite their desperate begging and pleading to be spared. Unfortunately, their killers were not in the mood to hear their cries. Asmodeus and Poseidon worked hand in hand to kill the surviving demigods for the sake of the half-elf, whose roars of anger reverberated in the surroundings as he continued to punch Elijah's face, who had already died from the injuries that he received from Lux's divine abyssal touch. Blackfire didn't dare to devour the fallen angel who had long died from Lux's countless punches. Despite the fact that his opponent had already died, the half-elf continued to smash the fallen angel's face until it turned to meat paste. The giant skeleton king was no longer pinning Elijah's body with the golden spear, allowing Lux to continue venting his anger, creating shock waves with each punch that he delivered. After he had smashed the fallen angel's head, Lux did the same thing to his body, shouting every time he delivered a blow. Only after half of his body had been mushed, blending into the ground, did the half-elf finally stop. He then raised his head to the sky. "Ariel!" Lux roared. "Give her back to me." The god of games, who was still not fully recovered after the battle with Daniel, slowly opened his eyes. He then slowly propped himself up, gathering what remaining strength he had to stand up. With a heavy sigh, Ariel descended upon the world, appearing in front of the half-elf who was still calling out his name. The moment he descended into Elysium, time came to a complete stop. Only the half-elf was not affected by this phenomenon, allowing him to talk to the god who ruled over Elysium. "Aurora," Lux said hoarsely, "give me her soul. I won't ask for anything else. Just give me her soul. As long as I have it, I can revive her. So, please, give me her soul." Ariel sighed before shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Lux, but I can't," Ariel replied. "Why?" Lux asked as he closed the distance between him and the god of games. "Why can't you give me her soul? Is it too much to ask? Aren't you the god of this world? Why can't you give me her soul?" The half-elf had grabbed Ariel's clothes and pulled him close to him, staring at the god of games with bloodshot eyes. Before Ariel could even answer, a hand landed on Lux's shoulder, stopping him from doing something that he might regret later. "Lux, calm down first," Max said. "Do not forget that both of us are always on your side. We have always been on your side." The god of games then gently pried the half-elf's hands off Ariel's body, which was still in a weakened state. Max was in the same boat as Ariel, but he was faring much better than his friend. Because of this, he decided to break the news to Lux, whose entire body was shuddering due to anger, anxiety, hopelessness, and desperation. "You have done your best for both Elysium and Solais," Max said softly. "Because of this, we are willing to bend the rules for your sake. However, we cannot do what we cannot do. You asked us to give you Aurora's soul, but if it were possible, we would have done it even if you didn't ask. Unfortunately, Aurora's soul is no longer in this world." The half-elf looked at the god of gamblers, whose face was very pale. However, Lux was in no condition to care about Max's circumstances because there was only one thing on his mind, and that was to obtain his lover's soul. As long as he was able to do that, he could ask Blackfire to store her inside its body. Lux would then find the perfect vessel for her so that she would be reborn in the world, more powerful than ever before. But after hearing Max's explanation, he felt as if a hole had appeared in his heart, which would not be healing anytime soon. Did her soul enter the cycle of reincarnation? Lux asked with trembling lips. "Perhaps it would have been better if that were the case," Max replied in a bitter tone. "But to answer your question, her soul didn't enter the cycle of reincarnation." Lux felt his heart turn cold after hearing Max's reply. There had only been one person whom he and his Grand Master had been unable to resurrect due to special circumstances, and that was none other than his master, AP. Lux felt as if his soul had left his body, making him fall onto his knees. His mouth opened and closed as if wanting to let out a word. But a part of him was afraid to ask the question he was dreading. If Aurora suffered the same condition as his master, then there was nothing that Lux could do to bring her back to his side. Perhaps noticing that the young man was close to breaking, Max crouched down and rested his hands on Lux's shoulders. "Aurora's soul didn't disappear," Max stated firmly, "but it is currently in a place that is far from our reach." Lux slowly raised his head to look at the god of games, who was looking at him with sadness. "Where is her soul?" Lux asked. "In the abyss," Max replied. "All souls that have been killed by abyssal creatures don't enter the cycle of reincarnation. They are either trapped in the place where they died, forever becoming bound spirits of the land, like what happened in Zangrila. This is just one of the two instances of what happens to those who were killed by the abyssal monsters. The second is that their souls would go to the abyss, where they are reborn as an abyssal creature." Lux didn't answer right away as his mind, which was in a clouded haze, tried to process Max's words. A few minutes later, he finally understood what Max was trying to tell him. "So she's in the abyss right now?" Lux asked. "Since her spirit isn't in this world, then yes, she is currently in the abyss," Max replied. Lux slowly stood up and looked at the god of gamblers before shifting his gaze to the god of games. "Send me to the abyss," Lux stated. "That is all I ask." Ariel bit his lip before lowering his head. "The connection of Elysium and Solais in the abyss has been severed," Ariel stated. "Although its power is still able to flow to this world and back, it is impossible for you to go there. I also don't have the strength to open a path for you." "Then what's the point?" Lux asked as he closed his eyes. "Since I can't go to the abyss, I will not be able to retrieve the golden lion from Daniel's hands. Without the pillars of eternity, Solais is done for." Max, who had remained silent, sighed. "Lux, you know that Daniel is in the abyss and is probably thinking of ways to restore the connection between the three worlds even as we speak. However, once he succeeds, it will not only be Solais that will be destroyed. Elysium will suffer the same fate. So let me ask you, despite the fact that there is a possibility that you will never be able to return after you arrive in the abyss, are you still going there to look for Aurora?" "Yes," Lux answered in a heartbeat. "I will go no matter what. Even if Daniel is there, I must go find her." Max looked at the half-elf's eyes, which were brimming with determination and desperation. "Understood," Max said. "Wait for us in Zangrila." After saying those words, Max moved close to Ariel and supported his body. Both gods turned into particles of light and disappeared. At that exact moment, time started to flow again, making Eiko, who was very worried about her papa, land beside him. "Pa." Eiko hugged Lux's body with tears falling down her face. Lux didn't answer, but he still hugged the fairy princess, who was hurting because she could feel his pain. Eiko, I will be going to Zangrila for a while, Lux said. Please protect everyone while I'm gone. Eiko nodded her head obediently after hearing her papa's words. Lux patted her head affectionately before turning into a beam of light. The ring GAAP had left him before his passing allowed him to do several things. It could help him go to the Necromancer's ancestral lands, as well as to Zangrila, where he had met his master for the first time. After arriving in the place that bordered Solais and Elysium, Lux found himself surrounded by abyssal monsters of calamity rank and below. All of them were surprised that a living creature had appeared in their midst, which made all of them giddy. Roars, screeches, and shrieks reverberated in the surroundings as all abyssal monsters attacked the lone half-elf, who had come to their territory to die. A calamity-ranked wyvern swooped down from the sky, about to unleash a dragon's breath at the half-elf. But before it could do so, a giant dracolic manifested in front of it and smashed its head with its bony tail. The other calamity-ranked monsters weren't deterred by the dracolica's appearance and simply charged at the half-elf, who was still standing still. Black shadowy figures appeared around the half-elf like a black tide, expanding outward. Hellfire annihilation. Diablo pierced the head of a calamity-ranked flaming bull who was charging towards his master from behind. Ishtar unleashed a barrage of arrows, turning everything she hit into ice statues. Pazuzu roared as he threw his spiked mace, obliterating all the low-ranking abyssal creatures that it hit. A 20-meter-tall ancient adamantine golem materialized on Lux's right side, trampling those who were within his strike range. A lone skull whose entire being was burning in white flames opened its mouth and unleashed a cone of white flames, killing everything within its range. Asmodeus snapped his fingers, and a dozen tombstones appeared around them, summoning countless greater zombies that tore the flesh of anything they could grab. Hundreds of shadow warriors rose up from the ground and charged at their enemies, starting a bloodbath. Draven stood beside his master with his arms crossed over his chest, like a bodyguard who would not allow anything to get past him. A dragon breath descended from the sky as Bedivere charged at the horde of flying monsters. The sword in his hand radiated with a golden light. Dozens of swords shredded the monsters in its path as the fallen war god, Revan, walked like a killing machine. Black and white lightning bolts rained down in the surroundings as Zagan made his appearance. Countless abyssal monsters were sliced in half as a creature without a face flew past them. The Nightgaunt, Shax, had also arrived to answer its master's call. A howl filled with malice made Lux's enemies subconsciously shudder as the Strigoi, Andrus, started a one-sided massacre, killing everything in its path. At that exact moment, a loud and domineering voice reverberated in the surroundings. United Nations smash. A beam of golden light obliterated nearly a fifth of all the abyssal monsters in the city of Zangrila as the strongest member of Lux's covenant arrived. Have no fear, All Might declared. I am here. Lux didn't even need to do anything as his named creatures and the members of his covenant slaughtered all the abyssal monsters in the city of Zangrila in just a span of a few minutes. After everything was over, the half-elf sat on the highest roof that he could find and closed his eyes to rest. He was thinking of Aurora and the moments they shared together. An hour passed. 2 hours passed. Several hours passed. Lux didn't know how much time had passed. However, he was broken out of his reminiscing when he heard a voice coming from his side. A gloomy-looking half-elf. Well, I guess their descriptions match you perfectly. Lux slowly opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was an old man with white hair, wearing an eye patch. He looked like any ordinary old man that one would see in any city. But a single glance was enough to tell Lux that this person was either a scammer or a bandit due to the devilish smile that was plastered on the other party's face, which was reminiscent of the con artists that he had seen in the movies back on Earth. "Are you Lux von Kaiser?" the old man asked. "Yes," Lux replied. "Who are you?" "Don't worry, I am not anyone suspicious. That's what all suspicious people say." The old man laughed and nodded his head in agreement. Max and Ariel sent me, the old man stated. They said that a handsome half-elf is desperate to rescue his beloved in a place that cannot be reached using normal means. Is that true? Yes, Lux answered. Who are you, old man? The old man smiled and flashed the half-elf a smile that would put toothpaste models to shame. The name is James, James answered. James von Ainsworth, and I've decided to take a stroll in the abyss. Are you interested in coming with me? Lux knew that the person in front of him was a scammer, but he was willing to take the chance. As long as he was able to go to the abyss, he didn't mind paying a hefty price if it meant that he would be reunited with his beloved, who had sacrificed her life to save not only him, but also the ancient kingdom that was very dear in her heart. The name is James, James answered. James von Ainsworth, and I've decided to take a stroll in the abyss. Are you interested in coming with me? Lux was about to say yes, but he remembered something just as important. Can you please give me a few minutes before we go? Lux asked. I need to say goodbye to some people. James nodded. You do that. The place we're about to go is a very dangerous place, and there is a chance that you might not return. I'll come back to pick you up in an hour. The old man then whistled, and an 8-legged stallion descended from the sky. James mounted its back and gave Lux a brief nod before lightly tapping the horse's neck. A second later, both of them disappeared right in front of the half-elf's eyes, making Lux wonder if he was just imagining things. If not for the fact that his subordinates had also seen James, he might have thought that the old man was just a figment of his imagination, born from his desire to go to the abyss to reunite with Aurora again. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Lux pressed his hand over his chest and muttered, Heaven's call. A moment later, 5 beams of light descended from the sky and landed around the half-elf. Lux. Aina immediately hugged the half-elf and held him tightly. Aurelia and Ari did the same, leaving Iris and Kai to look at their friend in confusion. The 3 ladies hugged Lux tightly, not willing to let him go. The half-elf closed his eyes and hugged them all, feeling their warmth and love seeping into his exhausted heart. Luna had taught him a lesson that, no matter what happened, he must properly say his goodbye to those whom he held dear in his heart. He only summoned Aina, Aurelia, Ari, Iris, and Kai since Valerie and Ali had forgotten about him. Also, Valerie was a dragon princess from Karshvar Draconis. Her absence would definitely cause a ruckus, which might make the Dragon King do something reckless. A few minutes later, he reluctantly took a step back and looked at his lovers with a bitter smile on his face. He told them about what happened in Agartha and how Aurora sacrificed her life to protect everyone from getting annihilated by Nyarlathotep's genocidal attack. When they all heard about Aurora's death, all of them teared up, including Aina, who had spent many nights together with Aurora during the year that everyone had forgotten about Lux. Both ladies had supported each other, and their relationship had grown closer during the few months that they were together. I am going to the abyss to find her, Lux said with a determined look on his face. I don't know how long I will be away, but I will not return until I bring her back. Eiko will remain here to protect everyone, so you can ask her for help. No matter what happens, make your safety your top priority and wait for my return. All the ladies nodded their heads and asked Lux to be careful. They knew that since he had already decided to go to the abyss, he would not stop until he found Aurora. All of them believed that if the same thing happened to them, Lux would have done the same, which was why they supported him even though they were very worried about him. Ari, look after Valerie and Ali for me, Lux said as he hugged the handmaiden, whose tears were falling non-stop. I didn't know that you were a crybaby. You never cried when I tied you up with ropes and let candles drip on your skin. Although that's painful, the pain I felt this past year when you were gone was greater than that, Ari replied. Please, after you find Aurora, look for a way to make Valerie and Ali remember. It pains me to see that the two of them have completely forgotten about you. Lux nodded. I will. I promise. The half-elf then raised her chin and kissed her lips, making Iris and Kai's eyes widen in shock. Neither of them was stupid, so it didn't take long for them to realize that Aina, Aurelia, and Ari had a relationship with Lux. A faint pain flashed inside their head, but the two endured it as they watched Ari kiss Lux back with tears streaming down her cheeks. When the kiss ended, Ari took a step back and allowed Aurelia to take her turn. I'm glad that you haven't forgotten about me, Aurelia, Lux said softly as he brushed away the hair that had covered the dragon princess' face due to the gust of wind that was blowing in their direction. He then kissed her forehead before kissing her lips, which Aurelia loved very much. Among the half-elf's lovers, it was Aurelia who loved kissing the most. It had been too long since she had been kissed by her lover, and it made her heart melt due to how bittersweet it was. Help Ari look after Valerie and Ali, Lux said. I will, Aurelia replied. Valerie always visits me, and aside from losing her memory about you, she seems to be in good health. That's good, Lux smiled. Take care of yourself, Aurelia. Aurelia nodded. MMM. The dragon princess then took a step back, allowing Aina to take her turn. The first thing the doll-like beauty did was raise both of her hands. Lux understood what she wanted from him, so he crouched down, allowing his lover to wrap her arms around his neck before kissing him on the lips. When their kiss ended, Lux smiled and pecked the beautiful dwarf's forehead. During the year that I was away, I met your sister, Luna, Lux said, which made Aina look at him in disbelief. You met my sister? Aina asked. You met her on Earth? Lux nodded. She is now an actress, and she's doing really well. I promised to talk more about her when I return from the abyss. You better. Aina looked at the half-elf with a solemn expression on her face. I want you to tell me everything from start to finish. I will, Lux replied. I promise. Aina reluctantly let go of the half-elf, allowing him to walk towards Iris and Kai, who were both looking at him in a daze. Their heads hurt a bit, but it wasn't painful enough for the two of them to blank out and lose consciousness. I know both of you have many questions, but I'm afraid that I don't have the time to answer them now, Lux stated as he hugged his two fiancées, pulling them closer to him. But please, wait for my return. I will answer your questions then. Iris and Kai glanced at each other before nodding their heads. Lux then kissed both of their foreheads before taking a step back. The reason why he didn't kiss their lips was because he was afraid that they would remember him, and their memories would once again be tampered with by the laws that prevented them from remembering him. Goodbye, everyone, Lux said. The next time we meet, Aurora will be right next to me. All five of them nodded in acknowledgement of Lux's promise. The half-elf then waved his hand, and the five of them once again transformed into beams of light, returning to where they had been before he summoned them. Although there was still time before the promised time of his return, the half-elf heard the neigh of a horse behind him. When he turned to look behind him, he saw the old man, who reminded him of a shameless bandit in one of the novels that he had read in the past. For the time being, Lux pushed this thought aside because there was a more important matter that he needed to handle. I am ready to go to the abyss, Lux said. Good, James replied before lightly tapping the back of his horse. All aboard the Sleipnir Express. Lux nodded and jumped on the horse's back, securing himself in place. All of Lux's named creatures and members of his covenant all merged with his body. This time, they would accompany their master to the abyss and protect him from anything that wished to stop him from achieving his goal. Once James was sure that the half-elf wouldn't fall off from his mount, he lightly tapped Sleipnir's neck, making the horse gallop toward the sky, where the endless abyss was waiting for them. Sleipnir ran across time and space, making it seem as though they were traveling at the speed of light. The only thing that Lux was able to see was streaks of light. It made him feel as if they were in one of those wormholes that he had seen in sci-fi movies. Lux felt like they had been traveling for hours, but he didn't complain. He knew that the path between the abyss and the two worlds, Elysium and Solais, had been severed, so they had to take a roundabout route to reach their destination. Finally, just when the half-elf thought that their journey would never end, he found something red at the end of the light tunnel that they were running through. Half a minute later, Sleipnir broke past the red light, and Lux found himself in a familiar environment. A red sky with a red full moon overlooking everything in the world. Below him, Lux saw several rivers of flames and countless portals of different colors. This is the first layer of the abyss, James explained. It has many names like the Land of 1,000 Portals and the Land Before Time. But, to those who frequent the abyss, they simply call this place Prima. Sleipnir continued to run until they reached the western region of the first layer, where a white portal could be seen. Suddenly, a wall of flame rose in front of them, preventing them from moving forward. This giant flame then took the form of a beautiful lady clad in flames, who looked at James with a playful smile on her face. "It has been 1,000 years since your last visit here, father of the slain," the beautiful lady said in a seductive tone. "Did you come here to see me?" "I didn't," James replied. "But allow me to introduce to you my new friend. Lux, this is Prima Donna. Prima, this is Lux." "Pleasure." Prima Donna winked at Lux before shifting her attention back to the old man, who had once stabbed her with his spear, making her feel a pain that she had never felt in the past. "So, what brings you here, father of men?" "The usual," James replied. "Just taking a casual stroll." Prima Donna sneered. "A casual stroll? You must be very bored if you've decided to take a stroll in the abyss." "Well, you know what they say," James replied with a smile. "Handsome old men are not afraid to get wet." Prima Donna and Lux were speechless upon hearing the old man randomly pull out a quote that had no connection whatsoever to their current situation. Perhaps, not wanting to let James take the initiative in the conversation, Prima Donna placed her hands on her waist and puffed up her chest. "I am the ruler of the first layer of the abyss," Prima Donna said. "As such, you will need to explain to me why you are here and where you are going. Otherwise—" "Otherwise what?" James asked. His tone is no longer playful, making Prima Donna subconsciously take a step back. Even Lux was suddenly surprised by the old man's sudden change in personality, making him wonder if he was just imagining things again. "No one in this multiverse can stop me from going to where I want to go, Prima Donna," James said in a cold tone. "If you wish to block my way, then—" The old man raised his hand and a silver spear appeared in his grasp. It looked like an ordinary silver spear, but Lux, who wielded a divine weapon, knew that he was looking at a weapon that was stronger than the divine rank. A flash of hesitation appeared in Prima Donna's face after seeing the spear. Clearly, she didn't have fond memories of it, knowing well that it was a spear that would always hit its target no matter where they ran to or hid. "I'm just asking for a fee, which everyone who wishes to use the portals in my domain must pay no matter what," Prima Donna stated. "You know that if you break this law, karma will catch up to you regardless of who you are." James then chuckled before lowering his spear. "Prima Donna, I'm just teasing you, you know?" James said in a playful tone. "Why so serious? Of course, I know that passing through your domain requires a fee. What do you think of me? A scammer?" "Yes," Prima Donna replied with a deadpan look on her face. "The greatest scammer in the Ely-verse." "Haha, you give me too much credit," James smiled. "Well, as you may already know, our destination is the second floor of the abyss. What kind of payment do you want before you allow us entry?" Prima Donna narrowed her eyes before shifting her gaze to the half-elf who was sitting behind the old man. She knew that making James pay a fee was an impossible thing to do. The old scammer only took things from others and would never let others take something from him. Since that was the case, then she would ask the only person that she could reason with. "This old fool would not have come here on his own accord," Prima Donna stated. "This means that the reason why he is here is because of you. So, tell me the reason why you are here." Lux hesitated, but in the end, he revealed what reason he had for coming to the abyss. "I wish to go to the 13th floor to see Queen Rhiannon and Antero," Lux replied. "I need their help to reclaim something that I lost in the abyss." Prima Donna arched an eyebrow after hearing the half-elf's reply. A moment later, a smile appeared on her face as if she had found something very amusing. "The 13th floor has been sealed off by Lord Antero," Prima Donna stated. "No one from the 14th and the 12th layer of the abyss can go to it. Because of this, that bastard, Daniel, was unable to make the 13th up to the first floor of the abyss submit to him. I don't know why Lord Antero did this, but I am very thankful for his actions. Because of this, the portals of the abyss that lead to countless worlds are safe from his schemes." "The 13th floor has been sealed off?" Lux asked in disbelief. Prima Donna nodded. "Yes. Now that I know you're here to see Lord Antero, I will waive your fee and allow you to pass. In fact, I will even make a deal with you." "Deal? What deal?" Lux frowned. He didn't like the way Prima Donna was looking at him, which was giving him a bad feeling. "I now remember who you are," Prima Donna stated. "You are the one who faced off against that bastard Daniel when he started the invasion of Solais and Elysium. I don't know how you survived, but since you did, it means that your fate is tied up with his. Here is my deal. If you defeat Daniel, I will give you free access to the portals of my domain. You can go to any world you wish. In fact, I will even allow you to bring a few people with you. But all of this will only happen if you manage to kill that bastard who is treating the abyss like his own house. Do we have a deal?" Lux didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the countless portals in his surroundings before shifting his gaze back to the ruler of the first layer of the abyss. "Do you have a portal that leads to Earth?" Lux asked. "Of course." Prima Donna nodded. "So, do we have a deal?" "Yes," Lux replied. "We have a deal." Prima Donna smiled sweetly after hearing Lux's reply. Truth be told, she didn't believe that Lux would be able to defeat Daniel. She just made that deal to motivate the boy. Perhaps by doing so, he would be able to inflict a world of pain on Daniel, who was currently lording over all the other layers of the abyss, whose denizens were helpless to resist the power that he wielded. "Send my regards to Lord Antero," Prima Donna said as she moved aside, allowing her two visitors to pass through the portal leading to the second layer of the abyss. Prima Donna knew that it was nearly impossible for Daniel to restore the connection between Solais and Elysium. Because of this, she knew with every fiber of her being that Daniel would do everything in his power to bypass the 13th floor, allowing him to travel through the rest of the floors of the abyss until he reached the first floor. If that were to happen, he would be able to forcefully create a portal that would lead to Solais and Elysium. But she knew that Daniel wouldn't stop there. Once those two worlds were conquered, nothing would be able to stop him from conquering the other worlds, which were also connected to the abyss. After entering the second level of the abyss, the rest was a breeze. The abyss was infinitely deep, but it wasn't infinitely wide. Each floor wasn't as big as an entire continent. At most, it only had the landmass of a small empire in Elysium or Solais. Because of this, it didn't take long for them to reach the edge of each level and take the portal to the next. Unlike Prima, who was overly protective of her domain and could sense anyone who entered it, the other demigods didn't even sense Lux's and James' arrival, making them think that everything was the same as usual. When they entered the 12th floor of the abyss, Lux felt anxious as he recalled what Prima had said to him. If the portal that led to the 13th floor was indeed blocked, he would have no way to proceed forward. Even James admitted that, although there was a way for them to reach the 14th floor using a detour, it would take them a year to arrive at their destination due to the complexity of the abyss. The old man was also very hesitant to take such a path because he didn't want to miss any of his grandchildren's birthdays, which happened every month. He was only able to travel due to the difference of time zones in each world, allowing him to abuse this loophole. "There is the portal that leads to the 13th floor," James said as Sleipnir slowly descended from the sky. Sleipnir had just confirmed that it is indeed blocked, so he cannot pass through it. The eight-legged horse landed a few meters away from the portal, letting Lux take a closer look at it. The moment he tried to enter it, he felt an invisible force blocking his way. The most he could do was touch the portal, but aside from that, nothing else was happening. It was as if the gateway had lost its ability to ferry people between the different levels of the abyss completely. But just as he was about to lose hope, a familiar voice reached his ears. "Little Lux, what are you doing here?" The half-elf's eyes widened in shock when he heard Antero's voice inside his head. Immediately, he turned his senses toward the portal and replied using his mind. "Antero, I need to pass through the other layers of the abyss," Lux replied. "Aurora was killed by Nyarlathotep, and her soul was sent to the abyss. I need to find her before it is too late." "Aurora died?" Antero asked. "Yes," Lux confirmed. A minute of silence passed before the white portal in front of him changed its color to purple. "Come inside," Antero replied. "Hurry." Lux immediately mounted Sleipnir's back so that they could pass through the portal together. He was afraid that if he entered alone, Antero would just close the portal, leaving James behind. The eight-legged horse finally appeared on the 13th level of the abyss, which made James arch an eyebrow. Even from a great distance, he could already see the giant golem of destruction who had been born when the abyss was first created. I see. So, he is Antero, James muttered. The stories I've heard didn't give him justice. Lux didn't know what the old man was talking about, but he was not in the mood to ask him questions. Instead, he waited until Sleipnir arrived near the golem of destruction, who was seated on the ground and leaning against the mountain, where the succubus queen's castle stood. Before Lux could even say anything, the golem of destruction cut him off. "See little Rhiannon," Antero stated. "Tell her everything." Left with no choice, the half-elf nodded his head. James then urged Sleipnir to land near the entrance of the castle, where hundreds of succubi emerged, ready to fight. Wait, isn't that Lux?" One of the succubus asked as she pointed at the half-elf, who was riding behind the old man's back. "That is indeed him," another succubus replied. "How was he able to enter the 13th floor? Didn't Lord Antero seal the portals?" "It doesn't matter why he's here," another succubus stated. "Everyone calm down. He is not an enemy. Don't attack him." Since Lux had helped their queen fight against the other demigods who had tried to invade their domain, all of them extinguished the spells that they had prepared beforehand and welcomed him and the old man, whom they were seeing for the first time. Sleipnir landed in front of the succubi and threw them all a curious glance. Lux, on the other hand, dismounted from the horse's back and greeted everyone with a solemn expression on his face. "I need to see Queen Rhiannon," Lux stated. "There is something very important that I need to discuss with her." The succubi glanced at each other, not knowing what to say. It was not because they didn't want Lux to see Queen Rhiannon. They just didn't know if their queen was willing to see him. It was at that moment that Queen Rhiannon's voice reverberated in the surroundings. "Bring him to my room." Hearing their queen's command, a purple-haired succubus took a step forward and motioned for Lux to follow her. The rest of the succubi, however, looked at the handsome old man with great curiosity. "Why does this old guy look so yummy?" a succubus with long blonde hair and red eyes asked. "Indeed," another succubus replied. "Why is he brimming with vitality? At his age, he shouldn't be like this, right? Can he still get it up?" another succubus asked, filled with curiosity. "Don't underestimate old people," a succubus with black hair stated. "Haven't you heard the saying that old gingers are still spicy?" Lux pretended that he didn't hear the comments of the succubi, who were eyeing James with mischievous looks on their faces. The old man merely chuckled and even winked at the beautiful demons, making all of them giggle. "It seems that your companion is popular with the ladies," the purple-haired succubus said with a smile. "We have been sealed here on the 13th level for a long time. I am afraid that they are currently in heat after seeing two handsome men enter the 13th layer. Ah, but don't worry. We are now allies. We will not force you unless you agree." Lux nodded and simply followed behind the succubus. He was currently not paying too much attention to what the succubus was saying. The reason? His heart was beating wildly inside his chest, and he couldn't understand why this was happening. The closer he got to Queen Rhiannon's room, the stronger this feeling became. "We're here," the succubus stated. "You can go inside on your own. I will remain here and wait for you to leave." "Thank you for bringing me here," Lux replied before opening the door. Right now, he was about to see the woman who had striking similarities with Aurora. The woman whom he believed to be his lover's real mother, who was currently lying on the bed and waiting for him to come and see her. It had been a long time since the two of them had met, and Lux needed her help in order to find his lover, who was somewhere in the abyss, waiting for him to find her. Lux walked toward Queen Rhiannon's bedroom, feeling a sense of dread that he couldn't understand. He didn't know why he was feeling this way, especially since he and the succubus queen were now allies. Since there was no possibility of him being attacked by her, he was finding it difficult to think of a reason for his anxiety. "Am I just feeling anxious because I want to find Aurora as soon as possible?" Lux asked himself. "That must be it. Otherwise, there is no other explanation for what I am feeling right now." When Lux arrived in front of the door of Queen Rhiannon's bedroom, he raised his hand and knocked. come in." After getting her permission, the half-elf took a deep breath before entering the room. The first thing that assaulted his senses was the fragrant smell of incense, which made him feel relaxed. In front of him was a large canopy bed that could easily fit more than 30 people. Unfortunately, he was unable to see the succubus queen due to the red bed curtains that blocked his vision. "Come closer, Lux." Queen Rhiannon's voice, which was as smooth as silk, reached his ears. The half-elf obeyed and walked toward the bed, parting the red curtains that blocked his way. When his gaze landed on the beautiful lady who was lying on the bed, he felt as if his breath was taken away from his body. The succubus queen was as beautiful as ever. She was even wearing a one-piece black nightgown that looked good on her. However, Lux's gaze wasn't directed at the beautiful woman's face. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the bulge of her stomach, and he was unable to tear his eyes away from it. A giggle escaped Queen Rhiannon's lips when she saw the half-elf's reaction. She didn't expect that she would see him again so soon, and truth be told, she was also taken by surprise. While her subordinate was escorting Lux to her room, the succubus queen had thought of many scenarios as to how the half-elf would react after seeing her. Although she had expected that he would react like this in one of her simulations, the look of surprise and disbelief on his face was priceless, making her unable to stop herself from giggling. Her giggle brought him out of his daze. But he was still rooted to the spot, unable to think of what to do next. "Come," Queen Rhiannon said softly. "You can touch it." As if he was placed in some kind of spell, Lux took off his shoe and crawled across the bed until he arrived beside the succubus queen, who was looking at him with a sweet smile on her face. She even took the initiative to grab Lux's hand and put his palm over her stomach, letting him feel the life inside her womb. As the necromancer of heaven, Lux could feel the strong life force coming from the baby girl, whom he believed would be born very soon. "Is she?" Lux said in a hoarse voice, while his hand remained in place. But before Queen Rhiannon could even answer his question, he felt a soft kick from the baby, who seemed to be giving him a greeting. The succubus queen smiled before nodding her head. "With your power, I'm sure you already know who her father is," Queen Rhiannon replied. "Yes, she is your daughter, Lux, and her name is going to be Diameter." "Dia," Lux muttered as he looked at the bulge of Rhiannon's stomach, making him feel his heart melt. Although there were many twists and turns in his relationship with the succubus queen, the child she was carrying in her womb was his, and her name was going to be Diameter. She was Lux's first child. The half-elf forcefully tried to regain his composure because, although he was happy knowing that he was soon going to be a father, his reason for coming to the abyss was just as important. "Rhiannon, we have to talk," Lux said with a solemn expression on his face. "It seems that you have forgotten to add queen in my title," Queen Rhiannon replied in a teasing tone. "But I will forgive you. This is your privilege for being the father of my child. So, what do you want to talk to me about? I'm sure that you didn't come all the way to the abyss just to come and see me, no?" Lux thought of many ways to state his reason for coming to the abyss to the succubus queen without making her feel upset, but no matter what method he used, it all came down to one thing. Aurora was killed by a denizen of the abyss while protecting the kingdom of Agartha, Lux said, holding Rhiannon's gaze. "The one who killed her goes by the name Nyarlathotep. I tried to search for her soul all over Elysium so that I could revive her, but she wasn't there. Someone told me that the souls of those who were killed by abyssals won't enter the cycle of reincarnation. Instead, they would be reborn in the abyss. I need to find Aurora as soon as possible. Do you have any idea about where she is?" The smile on Queen Rhiannon's face disappeared the moment she heard that Aurora had died. As one of the demigods who ruled the abyssal world, she knew for a fact that what the half-elf was saying was the truth. Since that was the case, it only made her more worried. After all, Aurora was her daughter. Perhaps due to the shock, Rhiannon almost stood up from the bed in order to charge out of the 13th layer in order to find her daughter. However, before she could do that, she felt a jolt of pain in her stomach, making her wince in pain. Lux, who was by her side, immediately placed his hands on her stomach and used his power to stabilize her condition. While he believed that there wouldn't be any issue if Jia was to be born right at that moment, he still didn't want that to happen. At most, The baby only needed 2 to 4 more weeks to fully develop, allowing her to be born perfectly healthy. Calm down, Rhiannon, Lux stated. You don't have to worry about Aurora. I will find her, so just tell me where you think she would be born in the abyss. Queen Rhiannon took a few deep breaths in order to calm her down. The moment she regained her composure, she looked at Lux with a pleading gaze. The souls of those who are killed by the abyssals are born on the 111th, 222nd, 333rd, and 444th floors of the abyss, Queen Rhiannon stated. However, I am willing to bet that Aurora's soul would be on the 333rd level. However, be sure to check the 111th and 222nd floors, just in case. Queen Rhiannon then summoned a pendant made of her blood and passed it over to the half-elf. I'm sure that you already know that Aurora is my daughter, Queen Rhiannon stated. Her birth was completely unexpected, and the process was extremely complicated. I had planned to seek her out the moment the gates of the abyss opened to your world. Because of this, I left a mark on her soul, using my own blood as a catalyst in order to bind it to me. Once you step on the layer of the abyss where Aurora is located, this pendant will glow. After that, all you need to do is channel your power into it, and it will form a red string of fate that will lead you to her. Lux took the pendant from her hand and asked her to rest. Take it easy, Lux replied. Once I find Aurora, I will bring her to see you. A faint smile appeared on Rhiannon's face after hearing Lux's words. I'm sure that she will be happy to find out that she has another sister, Queen Rhiannon replied weakly. Bring her back safely regardless of the form she has been born into. I will, Lux said as she held her hand firmly. I promise. After saying those words, Lux left the bedroom with a resolute look on his face. In order to find Aurora, he needed to traverse many layers of the abyss. Since that was the case, the possibility of him meeting Daniel on his journey was very high. At the moment, he didn't have the strength to stand up against the pseudo-god. Even so, he didn't plan on turning back. Now that he had been given the means to find his lover, he would scour the lands of the abyss in order to bring his lover back to the people who were waiting for her return. After leaving Queen Rhiannon's room, Lux found James seated on a lounge chair, surrounded by succubi. A few of them were massaging his feet, legs, and arms, as well as feeding him grapes with flushed looks on their faces. Some of the bolder ones tried their luck and reached out to touch his tralala, but the old man politely covered his ding-ding-dong, preventing the succubi from groping it. James, you're such a tease, a cute succubus said with a smile. How about you let me give little James a massage? Trust me, I will make you feel like you're in heaven. The old man chuckled after hearing the cute lady's words. I've been to heaven in the past, James replied. It's not as nice a place as everyone thinks it is. Oh? Then what is heaven like? A succubus with long blonde hair and red eyes asked. I've never been there. It's a rowdy place, much like an overnight bazaar, James answered. Fights break out every now and then between the different factions, and these fights sometimes extend to their followers in the mortal realm. It's a messy business, but it's a fun place nevertheless. Ah, your goddess is also up there. I know that it's hard to believe, but one of her beloved daughters had become my grandson's wife. They even have cute kids, so take a look. James took out a large portrait from his storage ring, showing a family of 7. A red-headed half-elf stood at the center, and he was being kissed by 2 beautiful succubi twins on his left and right cheek. Their daughters were clinging onto him, making him smile from ear to ear. Oh, they're so adorable. They are definitely living the succubi life. I want that kind of life as well. Our queen will give birth to a cute daughter soon. I will be the little one's big sister. Oi! I have already told our queen that I will be her daughter's big sister. Get in line. Be asterisk K. Haha, don't fight. I am going to be her succubus godmother, so it is best if we get along well. Hello? Since when do succubi become godmothers? Since now. The succubi became rowdy as they all fought to become Dia's older sisters, aunties, godmothers, as well as best friends. Lux couldn't help but smile knowing that his soon-to-be-born daughter was already surrounded by many loving individuals who were willing to fight for her sake. James, who noticed the half-elf's arrival, grinned as he lightly patted the heads of the succubi who were massaging his body. "Sorry, ladies. I have to go," James said. "Destiny calls." All the succubi had disappointed looks on their faces, but none of them stopped the old man from walking toward Lux with a refreshed look on his face. "So, where are we headed?" James asked. "The 111th, 222nd, 333rd, 444th layers of the abyss," Lux replied. "Aurora is bound to be in one of those places." James nodded his head in understanding. "Do you need to talk to Antero first? Or should we leave right away?" Lux pondered a bit before deciding to talk to Antero first. There was one thing that he wanted to clarify, and only the Golem of Destruction would be able to answer his question. The half-elf left the palace and hovered in front of the giant golem, who was seated beside the mountain where Queen Rhiannon's palace was built. Hee hee hee. The golem chuckled after seeing that the half-elf was hovering in front of his face. "Did you see little Rhiannon?" "I did," Lux replied. "Good." Antero then pointed behind him using his thumb. "You can go now. Find little Aurora. Bring her here." The half-elf took a deep breath before asking Antero the question that he was planning to ask the Golem of Destruction if he were to ever meet him again. "Is my master, Gaap, really dead?" Lux asked. "Yes," Antero replied in a heartbeat. "Little JP is dead." Lux closed his eyes and sighed. He was hoping beyond hope that there was still a way to save his master, but Antero's answer crushed all of his hope. "Go," Antero said. "Find little Aurora and return. I'll protect little Rhiannon and little Diameter." "Please do," Lux replied before flying away to meet up with James, who was already mounted on top of Sleipnir and was simply waiting for him to finish his conversation with Antero. Since there was nothing else to talk about, it would be best if he left the 13th floor and resumed his search for Aurora. There was also the matter with Daniel, who was somewhere in the abyss. Lux believed that there was a high chance that he would encounter the pseudo-god, who nearly killed him in their first clash during the abyssal invasion. "All done?" James asked as Lux landed beside him. "Yes," Lux replied. "Thank you for waiting." The old man chuckled before lightly patting the neck of his steed. Sleipnir neighed once before galloping towards the portal that would lead them to the 14th layer of the abyss. This was going to be a long journey filled with danger, and Lux had prepared himself to carve a bloody path forward in order to be reunited with Aurora, who had sacrificed herself to save the lives of everyone in Agartha. Somewhere in the abyss, countless red cocoons, made of flesh and blood, glowed and pulsated like a beating heart. Among these cocoons, one stood out among the rest. It was bigger than others, and it pulsated with a golden light. Over a dozen abyssal lords looked at this golden cocoon with expectant looks on their faces. From time to time, powerful abyssal creatures would appear in the abyssal nests. These unborn powerhouses were sought out by the abyssal lords, hoping that they would be able to make them their subordinates. All of them were waiting for the golden cocoon to hatch, and based on their experience, it should be hatching very soon. Depending on what kind of creature would be born from it, one of the abyssal lords closest to its origin would take that creature under their wing. For example, if a Minotaur-type abyssal creature were to appear, the demigod that was closest to a Minotaur would gain the right to make it its subordinate. This was done to prevent the demigods from fighting against each other, which could potentially kill all the unborn abyssal creatures in the nest who had great potential. Based on its aura, I have every reason to believe that the moment this creature is born, its rank will be that of a peak calamity-ranked monster, one of the demigods stated. Someone is going to be lucky in a few days and get a powerhouse as a subordinate. The other demigods nodded their heads in agreement. Since they were unable to discern what kind of abyssal creature would be born from the cocoon, the only thing they could do was wait. Amongst the demigods who were waiting in the distance, a handsome man with short blonde hair and red eyes smirked. Although he couldn't see the image of the creature in the cocoon, he could tell that this creature was closest to his origin compared to the rest of the demigods around him. Because of this, he couldn't help but smile in anticipation, thinking that soon, another powerhouse would be joining his faction, which would complete his collection. Crystal Palace. "You're so carefree, Valerie," Or said as he looked at the dragon princess, who was busy making a wreath of flowers. "If everyone could be carefree like me, I would probably be very happy, Valerie replied as she completed the wreath in her hands. She then placed it over Or's head, making him look like the handsome dragon prince he was, who was adored by dragons and dragonborns alike. For some reason, Valerie not only forgot about Lux, but also Or's true gender. In her eyes, the person in front of her was the dragon prince of the Crystal Palace, who was also her close friend and confidant. Valerie didn't feel any romantic feelings for him. However, she had unconditional trust in him. The last time Or tried to prove that she was a girl to Valerie, the dragon princess fainted for an entire hour before finally regaining her senses. At that time, she had forgotten almost everything related to or being a girl, which frustrated Aurelia very much. In the end, she gave up and pretended to be a dragon prince in front of Valerie, who was spending some time in the Crystal Palace as a peace emissary from Karshvar Draconis. Ever since the abyssal invasion started in Elysium, the two dragon kingdoms temporarily set aside their differences and united against one enemy. Because of this, Valerie was given permission to visit Or anytime she wanted. Both kingdoms hoped that the two would tie the knot and become a couple, ushering in a new era of peace between the two kingdoms. The funny thing was that the Dragon King was aware that Or was a girl. This was also why he allowed his daughter to visit the Dragon Prince anytime she wanted. Aside from that, it was good for his daughter to spend some time with someone her age, aside from her two handmaidens Ali and Ari. Lady Faustina and Lady Augustina watched the two from a great distance away. Both of them were having their afternoon tea together as they kept watch on the two dragons, who held the fate of both of their kingdoms. Suddenly, something happened that made both ladies frown. Valerie, who had just been talking to Or a moment ago, turned pale and started vomiting. Or was already by her side, rubbing her back and allowing her to release everything inside her stomach. Ali and Ari sported worried looks on their faces because of the sudden discomfort that their mistress was feeling. The two adults then appeared beside the dragon princess and checked her complexion. Valerie's face was pale, and she looked quite unwell. Because of this, Lady Faustina held her hand and placed her two fingers over her wrist, checking her pulse. A moment later, she frowned as she looked at the beautiful princess in disbelief. "What's wrong?" Lady Augustina asked. Did something happen to her? Since Valerie was visiting her kingdom, it would be a big deal if something bad were to happen to her during her stay. The two kingdoms were currently in an alliance due to the abyssal threat, and for the time being, she liked to keep it that way. "I need a second opinion," Lady Faustina stated. "Check her pulse and tell me what you think." Lady Augustina knew that her sister wasn't someone who liked to overcomplicate things. Because of this, she placed her fingers over Valerie's wrist and checked her condition. Suddenly, Lady Augustina's eyes widened in shock and disbelief after discovering Valerie's true condition. "Aunt, what's wrong?" Valerie asked after seeing the shock on Lady Augustina's face. As a supreme, very few things could make the older lady react in this manner, which made the dragon princess very anxious. "Is something wrong with me?" Valerie asked. "Am I going to die?" "You're not going to die," Lady Faustina replied in a heartbeat. "But there is indeed something inside your body." "Something inside my body?" "Yes." "Valerie, stay calm and listen to me, okay? I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer me honestly. Do I make myself clear?" Thinking that she might be suffering from a serious illness, Valerie nodded with a serious expression on her face. "You are pregnant," Lady Faustina said. "So, tell me, who is the father?" Valerie looked at Lady Faustina in confusion before her eyes widened in shock. "I am pregnant?" Valerie muttered in disbelief. She then looked at Or with a hint of realization on her face. "Mother said that dragons get pregnant when their hands are held by men. Or, you have been holding my hand every time I come to see you." Lady Augustina and Lady Faustina didn't know if they should laugh or cry after hearing Valerie's words. Just like the Dragon King, Lady Faustina also knew that Or was a girl. This meant that it was impossible for her to get Valerie pregnant even if she tried. Or glanced at Ari, and the latter nodded back at him. Unlike the clueless Valerie, both of them knew who the father of the life that was currently growing inside her womb was. But, just as Or was about to tell Valerie the truth, her face also suddenly turned pale. The next second, She hurriedly walked away before coming to a complete stop and vomited. Valerie cried out in alarm as she ran towards Or and rubbed his back, just like her did to her a while ago. Lady Faustina and Lady Augustina glanced at each other with grim expressions on their faces. After or finished vomiting, Lady Faustina held her hand and placed her fingers over her wrist. Half a minute later, a sigh escaped her lips, making her look at Aurelia with a complicated look on her face. "Excuse me, but I have to confirm something," Lady Augustina said as she also held Or's hand and checked her condition. She then looked at Or with wide eyes, disbelief written on her face. "Am I pregnant?" Or asked Lady Augustina directly. "Tell me, Aunt." "You are indeed pregnant," Lady Augustina replied half a minute later. "Is it safe to assume that he is the father?" The dragon princess nodded, confirming the steward's conjecture. "Who is this person?" Lady Faustina, who had forgotten who Lux was, asked her sister. "Is he also the father of Valerie's child?" Valerie, who thought that Or was the one who got her pregnant, was horrified to find out that the other party was a girl. "Or," Valerie said anxiously as she held onto the dragon prince's arm. "Don't worry, Valerie," Or replied as she held the dragon princess' hand. "I will handle everything." If news were to spread that Valerie was pregnant, things would become chaotic in the kingdom of Karshvar Draconis. Likewise, if those within the Crystal Palace discovered that their prince was actually a princess, and even more so pregnant with a child, it would cause mass confusion among their people. "Aunt, let's go to Karshvar Draconis," Aurelia said with a resolute expression on her face. "I need to talk to the Dragon King." Lady Augustina sighed and nodded her head. She had a feeling that she knew what Or was planning. This matter has to be settled quickly, Lady Augustina thought. The last thing that either kingdom needs is a scandal. After drinking some medicine to help both of them recover, Aurelia held Valerie's hand and stepped into the portal that would lead them to Karshvar Draconis. Desperate times call for desperate measures, Aurelia thought. "Don't worry, Lux. I will protect Valerie while you are away. Leave it to me." Aurelia knew that if she didn't take the initiative to talk to the Dragon King, the latter might do something reckless, which would lead to dire consequences. In order to prevent that from happening, Or decided to take the only logical approach that would save the honor of both dragon kingdoms, who were busy fighting against the abyssal monsters that were currently being led by the outer god, ManhwaRecap.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.